Vercel is the platform for front-end developers, providing the speed and reliability innovators need to create at the moment of inspiration. Founded by the creators of Next.js, Vercel has zero configuration support for 35 plus front-end frameworks, including SvelteKit. We enable the world's largest brands like Under Armour, eBay, and Nintendo to iterate faster and create quality software. Try out Vercel today to experience the easiest way to use Svelte.
All right. Welcome, everyone. It's another episode of, you guessed it, Svelte Radio. Hi, everyone.
Woo!
Hey.
How's it going?
So it's going all right. We have a guest today. Scott, welcome back. I think it's your, is it third time? Second time?
Second or third time. I'm not sure. Yeah.
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 Cool.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. What have you been up to?
I've been up to a lot. Yeah. In Svelte world, I've been, recording a ton of Svelte tutorial content, but I've also just been coding nonstop. It was like a big rush to get our version 4, I guess you would say, of the site done by Black Friday for a release, which honestly something I don't recommend, rushing out a big rebuild before the biggest sales day of the year. It's probably not a great idea, but we had been working on it since March of that year, and been working with a really talented designer, Travis Neilson, to do the new design. And I put that flake or that stake in the ground and said, all right, I'm going to have this done by November. And that was in like March. So then November's rolling around and I'm like, oh boy, this had really grinded out. Yeah.
You think that's like a long enough time, but timing everything, it's just, you never estimate enough.
And we're a small team, I ended up getting into some sort of stuff that would have, like if I would have just done just the CSS and components, it probably would have been easy, but I decided to like pull half of the site off of GraphQL and do some little here and there things that made my life way more difficult, but ultimately a better product in the end. So
cool. So a busy last year for you then. So we wanted to bring you back on to talk a bit about the rewriting of your site from React to SvelteKit. And I think you've mentioned this before on the podcast about rewriting it, but maybe having like what's it called? A retro of like what went wrong, what went well, what was good, what was bad. So let's hear
what went well was getting to rewrite everything in Svelte, which honestly was like almost a joy the whole time. I really personally saw the reduction in just straight up text across most components when you were simply copying and pasting everything and moving it to Svelte or SvelteKit. And even though I was at a pre-version 1, so a lot of the routing stuff was very different when I was making that conversion, it was still almost one-to-one in many times, except for when I was like wanting to rethink some patterns that I had done in the old React version of the site. And it was a great transition because I really got to take each component by component, evaluate it, clean it up, take a new approach to it or not take a new approach to it, get the conversion. At the end of the day, have a component that I felt like was way easier to maintain and easier to manage than what I had before in the React world. I had to do so many less weird things around state, around forms, around all kinds of stuff that's even gotten better since version 1 came out. But even at the time, I was seeing me personally having more fun working in the code base. I was getting jazzed to modify existing components that I hadn't touched in years or whatever. But just little things like that. Now I truly do have like such a great framework for the site in all my little components that everything just feels super dialed in right now.
I don't remember, was it a talk you did or was it a YouTube video that kind of walked through some of your thinking, like when you were taking it from the JSX over to Svelte? Was that a YouTube video?
Yeah, I did that same kind of content in a few different formats where I would just take a really simple React component and show like, if you have a simple React component, look at how much more simple it becomes when you rewrite it in Svelte. And we didn't get into too crazy of components. People always say like, well, why don't you do like more complex components? And that stuff can get into like really personalized decisions that you make. So it's like, well, let's see what you do if you have a Redux and this and that and whatever. I'm like, well, I don't have that, I didn't have that ready. So, and like many of the things that I'd be showing you with our GraphQL and our code gen and all that stuff before, we had code gen doing a lot of heavy lifting, and I was moving some of that stuff. So, some of it was just not super relevant for most people. We already had like a pretty bespoke setup anyway. So I was trying to keep it in to show like, at its most basic, this is what a conversion looks like. 3 lines to manage a state becomes a 1 line. And this for forms now becomes just binding to a store or just an object or anything. So ultimately, it was like a really great lesson in like the type of like positive simplicity you can gain from SvelteKit and Svelte specifically, because you're not just writing less code, you're having to do less to have the same effect, and it becomes easier to read in my mind.
Yeah, I found a few in here, and one all the way back to Svelte Summit last fall. So you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah. Svelte's been on my mind for ever since version 3 came out. I'd been thinking about Svelte since version 2. And then when version 3 came out, I tried it a little bit more and got just so enamored with it. It was, what can I possibly do to rewrite my site here? And it was a very good positive decision because, I reluctantly rewrote my site in React in the first place. So I was never
right. Was it Meteor before?
Yeah, it was Meteor, and their setup Blaze was a front end framework that was kind of akin to Vue. It was more similar to Vue than anything else, and probably more similar to Svelte than even that, because it had a templating syntax that was it was handlebars based. It had a lot of the stuff that I like to use even today in Svelte. So yeah, rewriting it into React always felt like, man, I'm doing this thing that was really easy in Meteor, but I'm doing it now in React and it's more complex. But I guess that's just the way it is. And I probably would have been more happy in life if I would have just kept it on Blaze until the Svelte transition. But who knows?
I feel like that's a lot of people that use React. They're like, this is just the most popular library. I just have to use it. And
yeah, React is very wonderful.
Life can be so
for some
much better.
things. But yeah. If I'm working on a website, specifically a website like this, like I don't need React for that. And I there's a lot of situations where I could get into. I'd say, all right, maybe I'll reluctantly use React. I'm not the biggest fan of JSX, but it's fine. It's good. But at the end of the day, I'm building a website, which is essentially the same type of thing a WordPress site or a Drupal site could do. And like, man, I really got to keep it simple.
It is fine. Yeah. I love to rag on it sometimes.
Oh yeah. I have to stop myself. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, that's funny. We usually do this Svelte lunch thing here in Stockholm once a month, or we try to at least. And we had one today. And funnily enough, people were complaining about React. Or rather, they were complaining that they couldn't work in Svelte. They had projects that they had to work with in React, right?
We had a developer on our team who left, who was moving to a React project. And he's like, man, it's really going to suck going back to React now. And I'm just like, yeah. I'm sorry.
You need to tell them to use Sveltosis. Try out Sveltosis.
Oh, I haven't tried that.
Right, yeah.
But Mitosis or Mitosis, whatever it is a really interesting project in itself.
It is. And Sveltosis is baked into it now. So it's into the full Mitosis project, and you can use it. Just use Svelte. So mitosis is a way for you to write JSX-based code and compile it out into another language like Vue or Svelte or something. I think Web Components is another way. And then Sveltosis is a Svelte-based compiler where you can write your Svelte components and then get that into like React or Vue or other frameworks.
It's kind of funny you have a compiler for a compiler.
Yeah.
In the Sveltosis thing.
Maybe it's a compiler. Maybe I'm using that word incorrectly. I don't know how it works under the hood, but it takes one kind of code and makes it another. So I assume that's compiling.
Yeah, we just talked to Mishko and the folks behind this, and it's a really cool project. A lot of the stuff they're doing in this space with Builder.io is really neat. I got my start in programming through visual programming. So like all these like visual drag and drop tools, I'm always like, I have an extra close eye on them because it's something that I secretly wish I could do full time, is just work in drag and drop tools.
Interesting. I don't know if I would ever fully like to do that, but Builder is pretty cool. And it's nice for marketers and other people that are not dev good at the dev stuff and dev tools. I'm not eloquent today with my words.
Good at devs. Yeah.
the word stuff.
Yeah. I know we get questions about this all the time, about like CMS choices and headless sites and things like that. And I just go back to the feeling that like that, man, the headless dev experience is just straight up not very good for customers, and it, you know, increases complexity tenfold when you have to deal with handoffs and things like that. So like when you get into these situations, you ultimately end up, you know, saying, just use WordPress at the end of the day. So I would really love a situation that kind of makes all of that a little bit easier. And Builder.io is definitely one of those ones that I have my eye on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been very impressed by them. Also because I think a lot of headless CMSs end up slowing your site down a lot through like injections of whatever, or just the API response. But Builder, you know,
names,
as creators of like Party Town and Quick and all that, like I've been just really impressed. I mean, yeah, so these names I kind of. We're really scraping the bottom of the barrel here. So the way I talk about them is, and they're friends, I have no vested interest, is that they are the visual CMS that cares more about performance than you do. And so I kind of like that. In fact, like out of like, you know, like there's a lot of buzz about Solid.js, you know, like Svelte came in second this year on the State of JavaScript survey. I don't know if you guys talked about that on Syntax yet, but yeah, like not super concerned about Solid, but Quick actually is doing something interesting there.
Yeah, we actually, so we recently have like interviewed so many people in this space, not unintentionally actually. It just kind of all happened. So where we interviewed Mishko, then we interviewed Ryan from Solid, and then we interviewed Fred from Astro, like one after another. And like I think what we're going to be doing is like a recap on all of the different options. But if you were to like list the things that I would personally work in, you know, I'd put SvelteKit number one just because I like writing Svelte the most. But I think the most technically impressive and the most like one to keep your eye on, definitely Quick. If I was to pick anything other than SvelteKit, Quick is, in my mind, I think the most fascinating of the options out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the resumability instead of the fact that you had to hydrate everything, right?
Yeah,
it is.
There's a lot of cool stuff that it does for you. Like SSR is not part of the meta framework; it's a part of the framework, which kind of gets really, you know, blurring the lines a little bit more.
But I think the fact that we're now recommending users to use SvelteKit, even on the Svelte, like the main Svelte site, speaks to how they're kind of merging in a way.
Yeah,
they're merging, but you can still use it as client-side rendered app.
Absolutely.
In SvelteKit. So,
but you could imagine a future where Svelte 4 does something in like that does something with SvelteKit in a combination that makes it not possible to use
it's kind of the
particular
blessed,
feature in
the blessed way to make a Svelte app.
Yeah. Now that SvelteKit is here, the next version of it can be an evolution.
Yeah, exactly. Like transitions, for example. Like, how do you do that if you don't have
page transitions?
Yeah, exactly. I guess you like it when the actual page transition API actually comes out and is fully supported. That would be great, and you wouldn't have to build it yourself.
Where did I see that today? Someone linked something that just came out. Sessions in SvelteKit. It's brand new.
Oh, snapshots.
Yeah. Snapshots.
You mean snapshots? Yeah. Have you guys seen this? It's a new feature where you can capture the state of a page and then restore it later if you go back.
It reminded me of page transitions.
Yeah, so you can store scroll positions, form values, and all of that cool stuff that you might.
Oh wow! No, I this looking at the PR right now.
I was wondering
very
if this was spurred by that conversation. I think Fred from Astro said something on Twitter. All of this starts on Twitter, I swear to goodness. And it was like, if you can't have a nav bar that you can click on and stays in the same position while a page transitions, then do you even have an app? Like, and I wondered if that was like the start of all this.
Yeah, maybe. And they just whipped it up in a week.
No, I know it didn't actually. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we use, to do page transitions right now, right? What we're doing is just grabbing something to wrap the container into a key. We're just wrapping a div into a key and a layout file, and then managing straight up Svelte animations. And then there's a neat little trick where you can do grid row 1/-1, grid column 1/-1 on the parent. And it just keeps everything where it is, no position absolute garbage, and you get your page transitions with no fuss. And so far for me, that's worked out really well. It's been really easy. And I think the only evolution of that I would love to see would be like using the browser-based page transitions API. That's like the next step for me. I probably won't touch anything until we get to there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about using that grid trick, because I would always just position it absolutely in in the transition or something. But that's kind of nasty.
It's nasty, and you end up there's occasionally some weird side effects from that. And this, no side effects, nothing weird, just works.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna try this out.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you migrated to SvelteKit before the major changes to SvelteKit. Well, the pre 1.0 major changes, I guess you could say. How was your experience? Like you got into you made it all into SvelteKit and Svelte, and then they dropped these changes. What was going through your mind?
At first it was like, oh great. But at the point when they dropped, was really pretty at a good spot in our total rewrite here. So we were already on SvelteKit. The site was already running on SvelteKit. And then we get this new design for the site. So the site was stable on SvelteKit with GraphQL. We get a new design. I say, all right, I'm going to rip this apart to do the whole redesign. We rethought like just quite a bit of the overall architecture of the site. And so when the changes came, the site was already like, when you're organizing something, you just pull everything out and everything's on the floor. Everything was on the floor already. My entire house was filled with stuff all over the floor. So it was a good time to be like, all right, now that the stuff's all over the floor, let's just start messing it up a little bit more. So I ran the migration scripts, and sure enough, I had hundreds upon hundreds of those little comments saying to move things here and there. And I think it could have all been easier too if I wasn't doing things in such a bespoke way. I had written my own GraphQL layer called jQuery, which we're still using in maybe about 10% of the site right now. And jQuery was really great. And the only reason I'm not using it anymore is because I've moved off of GraphQL pretty much entirely for this project. But jQuery was like a layer that bundled a GraphQL code gen with my Vite build process to take our GraphQL API and spit out essentially a store for each query. All I would have to do is run the get call in a .page.ts file, and then the data would be available in the store for server-side rendering. And it worked really nicely, but you know what? Like, I got really tired of the 8 different places you have to go anytime you're adding things to your GraphQL API. We had no other consumers of our GraphQL API. There's like really nothing. Like if you were to go like all of the reasons why you'd pick GraphQL, we had none of those reasons. So I was just like, well, now's the time where these changes exist. We're like, why don't I just go back to my Meteor days of things, do the data calls essentially right next to the components, which is how I did them in Meteor. In Meteor, you had this thing called a mini Mongo, which was essentially a fake Mongo instance on the front end where you could do Mongo find queries in the UI. And as long as that data was published to the UI, the Mongo find would resolve whatever that data that had been published was, just as if you were calling it from the server. And I really loved having that co-locating of my data right there. And so this was like, all right, I can just do a straight up DB call in the page.server.ts, have that data available for server-side rendering, not have to worry about an API, not have to worry about a second deploy, not have to worry about an entirely intermediate layer, and still get like type safety across the board. So when we took this approach, I was like, all right, what can I do to augment this even further? And so I used Zod for schemas. We were using Mongoose for our schemas. It was a pretty easy change from Zod to Mongoose, especially with Copilot. Was just like making it, you have the Mongoose open over here, and then when I'm typing my Zod schema, I just hit tab and it writes it all for me. So
these AI solutions,
yeah,
it's kind of scary.
Yeah, totally. So we took Zod and I found a package that converts a Zod schema to a JSON schema. We use that for database validation at the database layer. So out of that Zod schema, like before I had a GraphQL schema, I had a Mongoose schema, I had types, and I had to write all these separately. And they were all kind of, here, well, now I have to have types for the API itself because it's slightly different. And now what I have is the Zod schema. It validates my database. It gives me my types automatically. It can parse and validate my data in the actual application. But also what I wrote is like a quick little transformer to essentially convert it to this auto form format that I had. So I can basically take that same Zod schema, drop it into my UI and say, create a form out of this. And then I wrap it in a straight up normal HTML form tag. And now I don't even write any of my forms anymore because I have the same automatic form generation. Now, granted, it's not going to work for complex forms, but like for basic CRUD operations, I have 10 data types or whatever. My data types, everything's inferred from Zod. If I need like a special form input, I have a little augmenter that's like find field and augmented. All right, I want this one to be a text area instead of an input. All right, it's a text area now. And then that's been great.
Really interesting. It's one of those kind of hot new techs that's taking off. I know Astro 2.0 is using it for their content collections, and they're like using that for type safe markdown in that now.
Yeah, I was kind of skeptical at first. I was like, I don't know if I need this. And then I used it, and you get to basically, you'd write your schema, and then you say, hey, infer all of the types from this schema, and infers all the types, and you got your types. And the best part about SvelteKit is you do all of that. I do a Mongo query in my page.server, tutorials.find1. That tutorials.find1, that tutorials data is already typed from Zod, from everything, and then it becomes further typed into my UI, and I know what everything is every step of the way, and it all meshes so well for some reason without having to worry about a generation step that is finicky or broken, without having to worry about a whole nother layer updating the schema more than once or the types more than once. So it's been really nice. Yeah. So that transition was hard. I'll just say that. A lot of components, moving things from GraphQL, moving things from this and that. But at the end of the day, the product I have right now is way more simple, uses the browser fundamentals. I'm using progressively enhanced forms everywhere instead of GraphQL calls to do anything. Everything uses the use enhance. I built my own little use enhance factory function that sends like a toast message and does all these little things. So, I say use enhance, and then I pass in a function with the toast message, and then maybe if I need to go somewhere afterwards or have a callback function, just drop that right in there. And yeah.
Oh, that's really nice. That's what I was going to say too, is it seems like a lot of your pain points were just due to kind of scope creep and a lot of that coming through. So maybe not just the migration and the upgrade, but...
Yeah, a lot of my pain points were just straight up me being like, hey, the stuff's already on the floor. I might as well rip the stuff off the shelves and rip this stuff off as well. And then
I love how you're trying not to cuss. You're like, just stuff, just all the stuff.
Oh, yeah. I'm used to it. We have not like a no swearing policy on syntax, but like keep it to a minimum. Well, we listen to a lot of podcasts with kids in the car in both of our households. Right. And I was like, there's some of them where I'm like, listen, got to turn it down really quick. They're getting into some iffy territory.
Yeah. I don't think we swear that much on this podcast. I think maybe once in a while.
It does. I've had parents.
Yeah, I think in my everyday life it's like a bit much. But
our unpopular opinion section might get a little spicy sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. Well, it's a lot of emotions, a lot of heated discussions.
It's a lot of emotions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ultimately, for me, some of the animation stuff ended up just being the easiest solution was always to use the built-in Svelte in and out states. And I found using in and out separately was almost always what I did rather than using the transition to do like a one size fits all for all of my animations. But I didn't find myself needing to do that many, like getting into actual custom anything in terms of like the custom animations API where you're controlling things down to whatever you want to do specifically. And I did find that like most UI interfaces, things whooshing over here or cording out or fading in or whatever, like almost all of that can be accomplished really easy with the just in and outs, straight ups, and like fly or fade or whatever. And or even just straight up CSS. You know, so many things I just went to CSS land only because I didn't want the animation state to deal with mounting and unmounting something. And I just wanted it to be always mounted, show and hide of things like that. But for the most part, yeah, it's, you know, the things that Svelte makes easy with animations is just the direct access to the DOM. You can measure stuff really easy. I can measure a DOM element, and I know that like that DOM element on the page is directly correlated to what exactly I'm doing. I can measure it. I can do all kinds of things with it. And yeah, animations for the most part have been pretty easy, but I haven't gotten into any like, you know, the stuff I would really want to get into next, there wasn't really an appropriate use case for it in the site. And I'm a big fan of shoehorning stuff in where it's not appropriate, but this is one of those times where I showed some restraint. Like, I'd really want to get into more of like orchestrating animations. You click this thing, you know, like full on, you know, not necessarily into Flash app style, but you know what I was using the other day, my car dashboard, I have like a Hyundai that has this really nice video screen for your odometer and speedometer and stuff. When you change the drive mode, the shapes on it completely transform and the animations change colors and the stuff all moves, and it does it quickly. It's morphing. It's not like you're having to wait for it or something like that. And I was just thinking, I was looking at this and I was thinking, you know, if somebody tasked me with building this animation in the web, but not only in the web, maybe in Svelte or whatever I'm comfortable with,
Right.
What would I even do here? And I came to the conclusion, like, I've straight up, like, I consider myself good at animations. And I feel like I wouldn't be able to recreate that stuff in HTML and CSS and
You
JavaScript.
have to hire Jay Tompkins. That's what you do.
Gotta hire, anybody who's
Maybe
like
GSAP
crazy
or
next
something.
level.
Oh,
Yeah, GSAP, Or you know, what is it? What is that?
Yeah, there's another one.
Green Sock.
Green Sock library.
Green socks.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is GSAP? Is that? Maybe
Yeah, what
that's-
GSAP is it's short. Green Sock. It's
Oh, it is. Okay.
Oh.
I was going to say, because I knew
And
exactly
GSAP
what you were
is-
talking about when you said GSAP. But,
right. Yeah.
that's what you use when you use the Green Sock library.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
And I linked a couple things in the show notes. I know you've done a lot on animations. You have a course on it on LevelUp Tutorials on animating Svelte, and then you did Learn with Jason on animation with Svelte. So there's lots in there that stuff.
Oh,
that
yeah.
you've got.
Yeah, and you know, for the most part, you know, Svelte makes all of the day-to-day, like, standard animation stuff you do just very painless, which is the way I want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I'm going to go on a rant here a bit. Again.
Rant.
Oh,
I always do this, but well, it's a positive rant. It's about how most people come into Svelte only because of the performance, or it used to be that way at least. A couple of years ago, everyone was into Svelte because it's so fast, it's so tiny, there's no JavaScript, yada yada yada. But to me, it's always been the developer experience of using Svelte. It's just so much better than anything out there, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, it makes the things you want to do easy.
Exactly.
And it still gives you the flexibility to do the harder things in a harder way if you want to do them. But like, that was my always beef with some of the stuff in React, is it felt like it made the easy stuff hard for who knows why, because of principles or decisions that saying we're not going to veer from this path. And I don't know, you know, it's valid. But I like when the easy stuff easy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And to be fair, we have some of these things in Svelte as well. Like I don't think the maintainers want to put in the ability to easily pass down classes to components, for example. That's one of those things that comes up time and time again. And they're like, nope, not going to do it. But it's not like it's super hard to do it, but people are asking for an easier way.
There's little things in the Svelte API that like make my life better on a day-to-day basis. And like one of those is CSS custom properties on components like that. Like those types of little APIs make my life so much better. And just little things, little shorthands, class shorthands, style shorthands. Yeah. It's the best.
Yeah. Just today I had on this Svelte lunch thing, I had someone talk about how it's so complicated to understand how hooks actually work.
in React.
In React, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we don't have hooks we do have hooks in SvelteKit. Yeah, the server and the regular one. Yeah, it's
I know. Well, there was an
hooks.
argument at one point that like React ruined hooks because hooks aren't like specific to React, and now everyone associates hooks with React.
Yeah, I mean, and before React, hooks were a completely different thing, right?
Yeah.
Hooks were
wasn't
almost
even-
always middleware based. It's like
Yeah,
always how to
yeah.
hook into, or I think about even like WordPress. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's funny. And it's funny when people bring the React, what's it called, nomenclature,
Nomenclature. Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the word. Into Svelte, and you see these like use blah blah, and you're like, what does this mean? What do they actually mean? But yeah, sorry, it was a short rant.
It's probably just like functional programming too, just trying to bring some of that into it, which I think is what like React was trying to do with hooks, just to make sure that you're not modifying your state, but because of how Svelte is a compiler, like it tracks your state better than you can.
Yeah, the very need to memoize something at all as a function of like putting that behavior onto the user is wacko mode to me. Like that makes no sense to me to say, oh, you as a developer, you have to be responsible for memoizing everything down to the point, but also don't over memorize or overdo it. Just do it when it's just go by feel here. And like I had comments on that on my TikTok where I did a TikTok about like things I like.
Wait, you have a TikTok?
I do have a TikTok. I was doing it as a, Wes and I were doing an experiment where if we did TikTok every single day for a couple months, like how could like we go like in terms of audience size? And I went from like 0 to 200 in the first month and then 200 to 2,000 in the second month of doing a TikTok every day, which honestly was exhausting. 60 videos in 60 days or whatever. Yeah. And so that's why I'm not doing it right now, but also because the holidays and I've gotten sick a couple of times. And I'm like, we somehow managed to avoid getting sick all year last year. And then like something about this 2023, both of our kids are just sick nonstop now. They got the classic daycare cold and Yeah,
I have had a kid home the last 3 days of school. Like a different kid, but like just done.
Yeah. February is known as like the month where every parent here stays home with their kids because they're sick. Pretty much.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm experiencing it right now. Yeah. No, I'm working on a course right now for TypeScript in Svelte, and it was supposed to be out last week, but I got really sick, so then I couldn't record because I sounded awful, and then I started recording again, and then now I'm sick again, and so I think I'm just going to release the first half of the course, which is just Svelte in TypeScript, and then the second half will be SvelteKit in TypeScript. I'm just talking ins and outs and stuff, how to do the day-to-day things that you typically do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to keep things on a schedule when you keep getting sick, especially when you need to use, like you have an instrument that you need to use for that.
For sure.
Yeah, with Syntax, we record once a week. We record on Mondays, and I can just like, even if I'm sick on I can, save up all my energy for that. But for a marathon of videos, it's much different.
Before we continue with the episode, here's a word from our sponsor, Vercel.
Vercel is the platform for front-end developers, providing the speed and reliability innovators need to create at the moment of inspiration. Founded by the creators of Next.js, Vercel has zero configuration support for 35-plus front-end frameworks, including SvelteKit. We enable the world's largest brands like Under Armour, eBay, and Nintendo to iterate faster and create quality software. Try out Vercel today to experience the easiest way to use Svelte.
So you talked a bit about like data fetching and stuff when you migrated. Have you used the form actions as well? Is that something that you're using widely?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
widely.
of course. You mentioned enhance.
Hooking into like the use enhance, wrapper.
Yeah, and I can even like share that snippet because it's kind of fun. And I love the new forms API, and specifically because, like I said, I wrote like some auto form thing where I just have an inputs element. I pass in essentially like a schema essentially to the inputs element, and it writes out all of my form. But like the cool thing is that I can just use an HTML form. I can drop in the actions. I love being able to have named actions and all those things. It's been a process of moving everything over from GraphQL, where I basically am one for one almost taking a mutation that I have in GraphQL and copying and pasting it into a Svelte action, having that Svelte action be a very similar name to what it was in the GraphQL API. And for the most part, some of the things I really like within the Actions API, I love the Locals API. We had stuff or all these types of things intermediary before locals. And where locals is what we do for our authentication, like most people or people who've gotten into this inside of our hooks server file, or we're authenticating, verifying the user, passing the user data along as in the locals. And then anytime you need that user data, locals.user. One thing that bugged me was when they changed invalid to fail or something. That was like one of the ones I was like, oh, come on. Come on. I've just made all these other changes. Now I got to change this to be fail for some reason, which is funny because I actually like fail. It's fine. It reads better. But at the time, it was the only API update that I was like, now this one burns me because I have to go through and do a big find and replace for all that. But yeah, no, it's been fantastic. And what I do, here's a little, because the site's big, right? So what I do to organize the actions is I don't write any of my actions in the page.server file. What I do is I export const actions as an object, and then all of my named actions come directly from essentially a holding or a parent object from the model in which it comes from. So cool. I import the root action, let's say it's named users, and then so like toggle interest is users.toggleInterest. And so it's very one-to-one to how I had it in GraphQL as like a resolver. It's just a big object full of methods. The only difference is I get access to the request and locals and
That's a super interesting way of doing it. Because then you could, like, if you had something that you'd want to do on multiple pages, like you could just use the same users.is toggle or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
On the account page or somewhere else.
And it's not exactly sometimes when you make a sacrifice to abstract things away or move them into another file, it can like feel like it's adding burden to everything. And this way it doesn't necessarily feel like that. It feels just as easy. You just have an object with all your things in it. And maybe it's just because I already have all these quote unquote, mutations existing already. But for me, it was easy to just move all that stuff and put it into an object. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of keeping your code dry too. You're not repeating yourself over and over again, just importing it. It makes a lot of sense. I have a question about that custom input wrapper. Is that a component that you're like creating props and like generating all of that, or how are you?
It's actually pretty neat. So the root of it comes from the Zod schema. The Zod schema contains whether or not, let me pull up an example. Zod schema. So let's say I have like a blog post schema, right? That has a title, a slug, a status, a body, those types of things. Those properties are all defined by the Zod schema as being a string or even an enum or whatever. I then pass it through a function called convert to LUT schema. LUT is just like my autoform schema. And in that I can define properties as being meta, which means that they become read-only and they're just only there to be shown, or they're like they get put into a sidebar like a WordPress deal. Oh, sorry, I have a read-only option. I have a meta option. Those are two separate. So that way you can control, things you just want to display visually. And then you spit out that schema. That schema exists as whatever types of fields these all things become. Enums become select lists by default. I have the option to have them be like search select lists. I have a tags input if I want something to be tags, text arrays or numbers or any of that sort of stuff, date inputs. All those things are baked into this one single inputs component. So I pass in the array with my data structure into the inputs component, and it just spits out all of the correct elements. When I hit submit, automatically just shoots out the data. But I also have that data bound to another data. So let's say you want to display the form inputs as you're typing them somewhere. Like we have our course cards. So I want to type in my stuff about my course and I want to see what the course card looks like as I'm typing it in. That data is all bound so that I just have access. So the best part about this Svelte API, you just have access to that data right there. And then it all validates through Zod onto the database. So man, it's couldn't be any easier. I got really inspired by a package called AutoForm for Meteor. AutoForm was a package I'd been using for a long time in the Meteor world, which a lot of my development preferences come from that space. So I really wanted to take and make this into a thing. I had a version of this AutoForm with the old SvelteKit API before we moved to Forms, and I rewrote it to use the new API. And so that's why it's not published really or done or complete or whatever. But I am going to be open sourcing this at some point here. I was just needing to nail in the types a bit more. But it does exist, yeah.
Another thing that's like come up that you've done quite a bit through this is like jQuery. You open sourced and like published that, and I think you had Book It.
Yeah, I have a lot of.
Is it Book It or Book It?
It's both. It's simultaneously both. Yeah.
I can't like unsee the Boo Kit, so I.
Well, it was Book It, but then I made the mascot a ghost, so it's like whatever you want. Yeah, I've done a lot. I have an auto form is at LevelUpTuts auto form Book It. I have Svelte element query, which before media or container queries like actually have dropped here. I mean, they're still not in Firefox. It uses resize observer to add classes at certain breakpoints. I have an action called Svelte Fit, which does fit text, which is a challenging problem in its own. So let's say you have text that you want to have it fill a container. Svelte Fit will fill that container. It's a really interesting. It's a use fit. That's all you do is use fit.
It's an action.
It's an action, and it's we use it all over the site. It's pretty neat. So I have that Svelte Fit. I have Svelte Side Menu, which is a side menu that pops in, which I use for all kinds of things for displaying DevTool stuff. But like in the Drupal world, you had a side menu that you could clear your cache and access any of the admin pages. So I use it even for like our full admin navigation. It's just this little nub that sticks out on the side of your page. You click it, and a full sitemap comes up. You can get to anywhere front-end admin, or you can clear your. I have a Redis cache. You can clear your Redis cache right there if the cache is being annoying. And then likewise, I have a thing called Svelte Toy, which uses that side menu that binds to state variables where you can just have them easy updated there. So I build a lot of dev tools for myself just because I have ADHD and I get distracted when I don't, it's like, oh, you could convert 10 mutations right now, or you could work on a fun little UI thing that's just going to waste your time. It's like, oh, I'm going to pick the fun little UI thing.
Yeah, I actually did kind of the same thing the other day. So I'm working on the new Svelte Society website, and I was like, oh yeah, I need a drop-down menu. I should probably make a progressively enhanced drop-down menu. That sounds like fun. So I ended up spending half a day doing that, but it's an actually very nice drop-down menu. So I'm
there's something very nice about doing that. Like BookIt, which is kind of in a bit of a transitionary period if it's going to even stick around. That was like the exact situation where I found myself, I have this rewrite. I have to get it done by November. It's October. And I just spent 3 days working on BookIt, which is not even customer facing. And I just had to look at myself and be like, dude, what are you doing? You gotta stop this.
But it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like when you have a tool that doesn't meet your needs, which in that space, the Svelte space is very hard. I mean, it's getting better for a component, it's a storybook alternative. So storybook, and now we have Histoire. I don't know how to say that word. I hope that's right. And Vitebook. So we're getting some more support for Vite and stuff for
and Storybook as well is also, I think,
Storybook 7 now has Vite support, and they're telling me that if I install it in SvelteKit, I will not get an error. I have not tried yet as of yesterday.
I was just annoyed that everything in Storybook required a lot of work to do. And in a Svelte component, you can glean a lot of things from the Svelte component. And so the idea with BookIt was what if you just used Vite's glob imports to scoop up everything with a certain pattern? You took that, you made an object out of it, you were able to understand what the incoming and outcoming props were. You could just read them all as raw strings to understand some of it. And it worked really well for what I wanted to do. And then I hit this point where it's oh, now I have to have the canvas of this thing be an iframe. And I just ran out of steam on that. It was passing messages to and from an iframe, maintaining state inside and outside of an iframe was just really a giant pain. There's a lot of hidden complexities there that I just was I don't got time for. I will come back to this later if I want to. Because I think BookIt was really neat, and it taught me a lot of really cool things. But at the end of the day, if a tool out there can do it better than what I can do, I'm not going to be that much of a I'm not going to be that much to be I need to use my own thing. I'll use anybody else's.
You have to build your own thing for everything you do.
What's that called? Is it called not invented here? Isn't that something that?
Oh, I don't know, but I think I've heard that term.
Yeah. Sounds familiar at least. All right. So what's next for LevelUp Tutorials? Are you planning any new rewrites?
Yeah, I'm gonna rewrite the whole thing in quick. Yeah. No, for me, the next step is getting 100% off of our GraphQL API. We're so close. If I do a find for GraphQL queries in the code base right now, it's really, how many do I have left? 23 files. I have GraphQL calls in 23 files.
You can do that today.
I don't know if I could do it today because there's some hard ones like team management stuff, which is like the ones I've been putting off because they're the hardest ones, and also admin stuff. So it's like team management and admin stuff. Users aren't seeing the admin stuff, so it's like, it's a low priority, right?
Yep.
It's
always the last thing to go.
Yeah, so the next step is going to get rid of all of those. Once those are all gone, it'll really simplify a lot of things for me in my life. I don't have to deal with hosting and managing an API anymore. So once those come and go, I'm going to be working on features, a lot of features. When we did the redesign, Travis, who did the design for us, Travis Neilson, he works at Google. He's worked on search. He now works on YouTube Music. And
is he the guy that ran like a YouTube channel a while back?
Dev Tips. Tips TV.
I thought I recognized the name.
Yeah, so Travis
sorry,
and I
continue.
Travis and I met as rivals on YouTube. We were both like I had a YouTube channel that was like growing, I was probably at like 150,000 followers, and then he started like maybe a year after me and was like gaining on me quickly. And so he and I had a bit of this like rivalry without knowing each other. And I forget what it was, but we eventually interviewed each other on each other's channels just for fun. And then we liked each other so much that we met in San Francisco while he was living there. And we just became tight. We went to VidCon together, became friends. And then our family he lives in Hawaii right now. So our family just went to stay with his family for a whole like 10 days or so. So like he and I are close, and we've kept in touch for a long time. And him getting to do a redesign for us was a huge deal for me because I've just been a huge fan of his work. And I've always done the designs myself on LevelUp. So giving up the reins to Travis was like super freeing. I knew he would execute really well. And he brought like a lot of like rethinking of everything. Like, I noticed you're doing this, but I have no idea why you're doing this like this. Why don't you, I have this expertise that I've gained through working at YouTube and Google. It's like,
those user flows that like an actual designer like kind of sees a little more into some of those thought processes that you might not. I just have to ask, do you always meet like your really good friends through feuds? Because I know you and Westboss also had like a similar named course.
Wes and I never feuded.
No, but didn't you have a similar named course? And that was how you first met?
Yeah, and he asked me to change it, and I was like, sure, let's do it. And which is the right response, right?
It's like the syntax origin story.
Yeah, he's bigger than me, so at that time it was the right decision to say, of course, I'll change it. It's cool. But like he, in the same regard, like other people or whatever don't have those same types of responses to those types of things, and I think that can, just goes to show you just being cool with people and whatever. Yes. But Travis and I was really shocked at the output he gave us was this huge, really cool site. And to meet our November goal, it was like, all right, we're going to get it feature parity to where it's at right now. And then we'll take a look at all the features, the extra stuff that you've kind of done, because he really went above and beyond, and there's a ton of extra stuff. So I have about enough work for me in terms of features for the next like 2-3 years that who knows, we have mock-ups for all kinds of neat features and explorations and things that we're planning for the site. No, I got to get to it. So now that the site's released, solidify this GraphQL stuff, and then feature. Yeah.
Is there a Twitter handle or something we can follow Travis at, or link in the show notes? Yeah,
he doesn't really tweet very much.
Or something, YouTube, the Dev Tips YouTube.
He's at Travis Neilson on Twitter, and he definitely shows up occasionally. He's around. Travis Neilson.
He stopped making videos at some point, right?
Yeah, he got a job at Google, and it like took over his life pretty much, because that's what happens. Yeah.
I just remember I think he was the guy that did the like that weird sleep schedule thing, I think.
Oh, really?
I think so.
He's a
like,
very interesting guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Travis and
remember I
learned
watched
a lot
his
from
videos
him.
a lot. Yeah. It's a cool person. Yeah. All right. And anything else that you want to talk about before we move on to unpopular opinions?
Don't be afraid to rewrite your React site in Svelte, and like don't be afraid to even like just start it to see. You just start it to see. You don't have to like follow through, but take a couple of days. And that was how my initial thing came out. Was I said one weekend I said, hey, what would this actually take to do it? Let me just do a quick exploration. Did a quick exploration and saw that not only could I do it, it was the thing to do. So just give it a try.
Yeah.
Yep.
And talking your team into it, I think you did a whole talk on that too. And we've had several more that have come through Svelte Society, like YouTube and London have had talks on convincing your team on making the switch.
Yeah. And I think Apple Music has helped us there, right?
Yeah.
You can now have something that you can point to, like, hey, look.
That's the tweet that won't die, except now someone has come into the comments of that tweet and has said that they think the core maintainers should volunteer their time to Apple to help them diagnose their performance issues.
It sounds like someone who's doing something voluntarily should spend their time on.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's what I was doing.
What was it? $2.9 trillion company should not pay for open source work. Yeah.
Well, I think
that's my unpopular opinion. I just moved.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Sure. I was just gonna mention, like, on rewriting that could be a very fun video series that we could do on the channel, Brittney. Like we could maybe, if we could convince some company to let us just rewrite their code from React to Svelte, that could be a lot of fun.
That would be an interesting series.
It
I will
would,
let
right?
you take that on. I don't have to work with React anymore.
I was going to
True.
do like a lot of videos on it, and then I just like, I actually have to work. I actually have to
You have
do code here.
actual things you have to do.
All right. Okay, so unpopular opinions. You just stated yours.
Yeah.
Brittney?
I really do not think that, but I will say it just for the sake of having an unpopular opinion that OSS maintainers should volunteer their time to Apple and not be paid for the I can't even keep a straight face.
Yeah. Scott, do you have one?
Sure, I'll throw a couple, towards
excited.
React's way, but like no, I think some of the biggest beef I have, or comments that I have with people who look at Svelte and who are developers of maybe potentially React and look at Svelte and say, well, I like React because it's just JavaScript, or I don't like that there's a templating language in Svelte. I gotta say, one, JSX is a templating language.
Yeah.
It is just a bad templating language. It's a templating language. It's just like,
It's just JavaScript template.
Yeah. And two, React is not just JavaScript. Come on, you're writing HTML, pseudo HTML inside of JavaScript. It's not just JavaScript. Like, can we just drop those Also, React is a framework.
But it's a template string.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Literal or whatever.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Okay. Those are the hot ones here. It's just JXS is a templating language. React isn't just JavaScript. And yeah, I'll just say those.
Agreed.
You can disagree with
That's
me.
not an unpopular opinion here.
No, you're among friends, Scott.
One of the things that drives me the craziest, and one of the things I love about Svelte, is that you can shorthand your props. So having to say the prop equals the prop is I don't want to say stupid. It's bad.
Yeah. It's just a weird choice.
Yeah,
Odd choice.
it's an odd choice. Yeah. It's a great way to say it.
We're very privileged in Svelte land, probably.
Yes.
I whenever I go back and like watch some project that some friend is doing and it's in React and I'm trying to like do some React, I always do the prop thing where I just do the curly braces and the prop name, and it's just like it errors, and I'm like, oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
all right.
right, yeah. Anyway, I don't have an unpopular opinion today. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
That's okay.
Yeah. So picks.
My pick this week is going to be our new series, This Week in Svelte, that E-Train or Enrico has been doing. And hopefully it's going to be at a better time for like Scott's time zone next week. I think we're planning on doing alternating weeks. So it's going to be kind of earlier one week and then a little bit later the next week to kind of hit both crowds. But yeah, I'm really excited about where it's going. We're kind of evolving it as it's going through too. It started in the Discord voice chat, but I think we're going to try YouTube next, right? Yeah, not this week, but next week.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's basically he goes through and checks the most common questions and stuff in the Svelte Discord. So
cool.
Could be fun.
And then things that are like coming up too. So just any GitHub conversations that are going on, changes that have happened. I think it's pretty informative.
Cool. So I could go next. So I don't know if you guys have ever played Super Nintendo.
Of course.
Yes. So there's a game for Super Nintendo called Mega Man X, which is a great game if you like Mega Man. And I love Mega Man. But there's someone who has made like a ROM hack thing where they've essentially made a new Mega Man X game for the Super Nintendo, and it's been in development for 15 years, which is just nuts to me. And it's got everything in it. So that's something to check out. But it's still not released. There's just a video. So
do you play that on an emulator at this point, or do you have to have an original?
I think you would use an emulator, yeah.
Yeah, my understanding of ROM hacks is it's just like an actual manipulation of the original ROM file. Like, so you rip the ROM and then you manipulate that. I get into, I don't actually play any ROM hacks, but I do watch a lot of YouTube where they talk about ROM hacks or like interesting ones or whatever. There's
same.
A YouTube channel I like called SNES Drunk.
Oh no, I watch it as well.
Oh yeah,
I just watched it earlier today.
Yeah, I watch it before I fall asleep. He's very calming for some reason.
Yeah. So the ROM hack is called Mega Man X Corrupted, and I'll put a link to a YouTube video here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'll check this out. My pick will be a I think it's Nimbot, but there's two I's, so maybe Nimbot. I've always just said Nimbot. NIIMBOT, and it's a little tiny Bluetooth thermal label maker. And so one, it has no ink because it's thermal. Two, it prints onto little stickers that are tiny, but you can get like customized versions, and there's hundreds of them on a roll. So you put a tape roll of these little labels. And again, there's no ink in this thing, and it's a little Bluetooth connected printer, and it has an app, which like you think label maker app, that's a little too much, right? But like the cool thing is that it has a little label designer in the app that you can use like emoji for, or like you can rearrange and change the typeface. So for me, I was doing I was putting in some new switches and doing some electrical. And so I was printing out labels for which of my line wires are line wires, and I was leaving space so that there was room to fold them over, or we were printing out labels for all of the tubs for organization in the basement, and so I could have a little lightning bolt for Thunderbolt cables, or a globe for Ethernet cables, or a tombstone for obsolete cables, or and I bought this thing, and my wife was like, this is like prime territory for something that you buy and just don't use. And I was thinking, all right, I'm gonna show you here. So I've been labeling everything.
It sounds like one of these things where instead of doing the actual work, you kind of end up making labels that look nice.
It's great though. You can save templates.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
Pop in. And it has actually been really a net positive in my life since arriving. But you say like little thermal label printer as a 37-year-old, I'm like, man, that rules.
No, this sounds amazing. This weekend, I was watching this show called Get Organized on Netflix, and it's like a closet organization, or they go into like pantries, anything, and organize it. And they always use labels, and they call these things zones. Like you got to set up your zones and like organize. But I'm like, oh, labels. Like I could print custom labels to organize my stuff.
Yeah. It's prime territory for something that you would like think about wanting to do and then not actually do it. But this makes it easy enough that you can just fire them off really quickly and
And that sounds really boring. I didn't give that show justice, like just going into a closet and organizing it. I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting.
Oh, no, it's the home edit. Yeah, I've watched that. I know
the
exactly
home edit. That's it. Yeah. It's not
I know exactly
get
what you're talking
organized. It's
Well, I
the
think it
home
is.
edit.
I think it's called Get Organized.
The home
With,
edit.
I'm gonna
because I googled
With the
I googled
home
it.
edit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know because
I
my
think
wife followed them on Insta before, so we were
Yeah.
prepared for that show.
Nice.
It's a great pick. I think I'm actually gonna go buy one because I need to organize stuff. So this is actually a very, very timely one.
Oh yeah, and I should say it's a low investment. This thing's like $30, and
there's
it
a
includes
30% coupon right now.
tons and tons of labels with it. So I haven't even come. And here's another thing: my kids love it. They love making.
When you said emoji,
making-
I was like, oh God, the kids.
they're
Kids
printing
would
out
be
little
all over it.
stickers with all kinds of things on it. Oh yeah.
Are they on your walls though? That
They-
would make me.
Oh, they were on our walls. They were on the dogs. They were on everything. Yeah.
Do they peel
On the
off of the
dogs?
walls?
Oh yeah, they peel off of everything. Yeah, they're
Okay.
these little. They're not like when you rip them off. They're not like paper. They're like plastic covered little stickers. So,
Okay.
yeah.
That's good. That's good. Don't want stickers on your walls forever.
Yeah, we have stickers that get on our walls, and then they just like the paper sticks to the wall, and so you can't get the whole sticker off, and then you gotta no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know the vibes.
All right. I think that's it. Thanks for coming on again, Scott.
Anytime.
Always welcome. And yeah, we'll see you all, or rather talk to you all next week. Bye-bye.
Later.
Later.
Hey, it's Kevin. If you like the show, please drop a review on your favorite podcast player. It would help out a lot. Thanks.